Today we are going to be doing lesson 4 from Eureka, and we're going to be talking about the opposite of a number. So our first concept here, sorry, I got to rearrange here, is that each non-zero integer has an opposite, which is denoted negative a. So basically what they're telling you is that this symbol literally means opposite. Just like our multiplication really means groups of. This negative, we call it a negative sign, but its meaning is that it is the opposite of whatever number this is. So negative a and a are opposites if they are on opposite sides of 0. So they either are, one of them is above 0 and one of them is below 0. So we know above 0 is positive numbers, below 0 is negative numbers, or one of them is to the left of 0, which would be negative numbers, or to the right of 0, which is positive numbers. If they are the same distance to the left and right from 0, or the same distance from 0 above and below, then they are considered opposites of each other. This is a lesson and a part where you really have to read carefully, because sometimes they'll say graph this number and sometimes they'll say graph the opposite of that number. So as always, please make sure you are reading carefully. So next I want you to locate the number 8 and its opposite on this number line and explain how they are related to 0. So when I want you to locate the number 8, I want you to put a dot. For instance, if I was locating number 2, I would put a dot like that. How it is related to 0, it is 2 tick marks to the right of 0. So your job is to locate the number 8 and its opposite on the number line, and then explain to me how it is related to 0. So push pause until you have that completed, and then come back and check. If you are back, it means that you have located 8 and its opposite, which would be denoted as negative 8. That's the notation for it. Explaining how they are related to 0. This one is related to 0 because it is 8 tick marks to the right of 0, and this one is 8 tick marks to the left of 0. So our definition for opposites are the same distance from 0, but in different directions. So we have opposite directions, left and right, but we have the same distance, 8 tick marks. So now your job is to locate and label the opposites of these numbers. So that's where that reading part comes in. The opposites of the numbers that are listed here on the number line. So for example, if there was an E here and it said 10, the opposite of 10 is negative 10. So I would have graphed on the number line negative 10, and I would have labeled it an E. So your job is to now graph and label the opposites of all of these numbers. Push pause until that is done, and then check back for your answers. If you are back, it is because you have finished graphing and locating the opposites of these numbers. So the first one, 9, the opposite of that is negative 9. So that would be right here. A, 9 tick marks to the left of 0. The opposite of negative 2, since negative 2 is to the left of 0, the opposite would be 2 spaces to the right of 0. So that would be a positive 2 with a B. C, the opposite of 4, well, 4 is to the right of 0, so the opposite of that is to the left of 0, so that would be indicated with a negative 4. So here is C. And then the opposite of negative 7, which is to the left of 0, I got that one wrong, is 7. So 7 would be to the right of 0 and marked D. All right, moving on. Next, you need to write the integer that represents the opposite of each situation. Explain what 0 means in each situation. So this is similar to what we've been doing in the past when we talked about like football play. If one of these was like if there was a gain of, if there was a gain of 15 yards, the opposite of that would be a loss. I would write the integer that represents the opposite of that, which would be a loss of 15 yards. What 0 would mean in that situation is no gain or loss of yards on the play. So they got tackled right at the line of scrimmage. They didn't lose any yards, but they didn't gain any yards either. So for each of these situations, please write the integer that is the opposite of that situation and tell me what 0 would mean in that situation. When you are done with that, check back to see if you were correct. Before we grade these, this is kind of random, but I forgot. I accidentally copied your homework twice. So if you could go ahead to the back page of your packet here that says problem set, it should be the back of your packet, and just cross that out. You do not need to do this page because it's going to be on a different page. So sorry, that's kind of random, but I didn't want to forget. Okay, so now seeing here, did you write the opposite of 100 feet above sea level? Well, the opposite of 100 feet above sea level would be -100 because that would be below sea level. And in this case, whenever we're talking about sea level, 0 means literally sea level. The opposite of being 32 degrees below 0 would be 32 degrees. So it would be a positive 32. 0 in this case would mean 0 degrees Celsius, which is also known as our freezing point. A withdrawal of $25 means that you are taking money out of your bank account. So that would be a -25. So the opposite of withdrawing money or taking out would be $25 deposit or a +25 to your bank account. A 0 in that situation would mean that there was no change in the account. It didn't increase or decrease. So now you're going to do example 2, where you're going to do a real world example. So you're going to walk through here and they're going to talk about Maria and where she's walking, and she has some different places that you need to mark on your number line and determine an appropriate scale and model the situation on the number line below. As you are reading the situation here, you need to think about what would represent your 0 and then what would represent going left from that item or going right from that item. Since Maria is walking, she's going some different directions. So left and right in direction sense would be east and west. So if you're thinking about like the compass, how it goes north, east, south, west. A vertical number line would show us north and south directions. West and east would be on a horizontal number line. So as you read through this, think about what would be your 0 mark and then what locations would be based off of that 0 mark and where they would be located. If you are still listening to this or you are back, it means you are ready to grade, look at your, get feedback on what you did for your number line. So as I read mine, I noticed that the two stores were being compared to the bookstore. So it said the Furry Friends was 7 blocks west of the bookstore, and it said that Ray's Pet Shop was 7 blocks east of the pet shop. So that made me feel like the bookstore needed to be the 0 location. So if this is the bookstore, I would represent west to the left of the bookstore, which could be described as being at -7 blocks, and that would be the Furry Friends. Again, reading very closely to make sure that which one was described as west and which one was east is very important. So then we have Ray's Pet Shop over here, which is 7 blocks to the east of the bookstore. Our question says, which location, if any, is the farthest from Maria while she is at the bookstore? Well, if she's right here, which one is further? The answer would be So that would be a good explanation when it says explain your answer. And then what does 0 represent in this situation? It would be this. So now you are going to read each of these situations carefully below and demonstrate them on the number lines, and then check back to see if you are correct when you have that work completed. All right, if you are back with me, it means that you have finished this and you're ready to check your answers. So we needed to locate and label a credit of $15. So I think your scale should have been by 5, so you could fit the 15 and -15. For the label, I wrote credit. You could have put an A and put an A over there. And then this is how I located it with the dot. Make sure that your negative numbers are to the left of 0 and that -5 is closer to 0 than -10. And then what does 0 represent in this situation? 0 means no change in account. On this one, since it's temperature, I really would have preferred a vertical number line. I'm not sure why they did a horizontal one, but on your scale should have been by tens this time because we needed to do 20 and -20. 20 below 0, I just labeled it below 0. Here's -20. Above 0 is this 20, and then 0 would have meant 0 degrees Celsius. Down here we add a little science in. A proton represents a positive charge. An integer represents 5 protons. And an electron represents a negative charge, so that's a -3. Write an integer to represent 3 electrons, so that would be -3 and a +5. So that is working with opposite numbers. Remember that we say this is -3, but the meaning of this negative sign is that it is opposite of normal. So normally we start at 0 and go to the right. If this is there, that's the opposite of that, so we go to the left. Numbers are considered opposites if they are the same distance from 0 in opposite directions. One's left, one's right, one's up, one's down, one's positive, one's negative. Tonight, your homework is to complete both sides of this page here. Make sure you are reading carefully to understand if you're doing the opposite of something or doing the regular of something. And it is both sides. It shouldn't be that long of a process. It should go pretty quick, and I have some examples there for you to and it should go pretty much like what our class lesson did. If you have extra time right now, you can go to Prodigy Game, and it should be geared up to give you a couple division problems and then work on some negative numbers and opposites as well.